How's it going, everybody? It's your boy Wardy, and as you can see, we're back at it talking about the Amazons. We're also back at it discussing a player in which I have viewed highly of all MLB offseason long. I would certainly love him in this New York Metropolitan rotation for the 2024 season and beyond. And that is none other than Southpaw free agent Jordan Montgomery has finally been linked to the New York Mets in various ways that we're about to get into on these latest reports. So we're going to break down the likelihood, unlikelihood of Monty Laney in Queens. What could he provide to the Mets in their rotation? And what would the Mets be missing out on should they lose out on these potential Montgomery sweepstakes? And so much more is where we're about to deep dive. But before we go further, I have to let you all know about today's video sponsor and our great friends, that being Game Time app. Because as many of you know, I love my sports, hence the whole YouTube thing. I also love attending concerts, comedy shows, among many other various forms of entertainment each year. So in order to do that, I got to get my tickets, right? And that's where Game Time app comes into play. Because if, in case you're unaware, they have been taking the ticketing space by storm the past couple years, and they are your go-to, especially for last-minute tickets. If you're like me, you hate, and I mean absolutely hate it, when you need last-minute tickets and you cannot get them, let alone you get them, but there's all these ridiculous extra charges and fees that you weren't expecting. Game Time app has you covered with the best deals imaginable every single week for all your various entertainment that you want to seek out, and they're not going to beat around the bush. They're going to give you those flat rates right up front, so you're not charging anything additional that you weren't initially expecting. So you want to check your seats as well from the seat itself. So in the app, you go through it and you want to say, hey, where am I sitting exactly while attending this baseball game or attending this concert? You can do exactly that in the Game Time app. If you want an app that's going to protect you from any type of cancellation, whether it's from a concert, comedy show, sports game, whatever it may be, Game Time app again has you covered. So for all these reasons and then some, why are you still waiting? Make sure you click the link if you haven't already in the description to download the Game Time app today for all your ticketing needs and use my promo code WARDY, that is WARDY, for 20% off your first purchase. Again, that is promo code WARDY for WARDY off your $20 off your first purchase. Shout out to Game Time app again for sponsoring today's video. Alrighty, guys and gals, you know the drill. I want to see your initial reactions, thoughts, comments, and concerns down below to the news that, yes, the Mets are showing interest here in Jordan Montgomery. But where does this stem from? Well, it comes from my good friend and a phenomenal independent reporter covering the Mets and all across baseball as a whole, Michael Marino, here on Twitter, states the following earlier today. Sources: Mets have identified Jordan Montgomery as a pitcher they really like. Yoshinobu Yamamoto is someone they also are really interested in, but far more teams are interested in him, which could make it more difficult to acquire him. Both pitchers on Mets wish list. So of course, I know initial reactions is like, oh my goodness gracious, does this mean the Mets aren't going to get Yamamoto? No, that isn't necessarily true whatsoever, but of course the Mets, they need plan B options. While Yamamoto, I made it very clear in recent content, I think that he is a unicorn himself. Should you lose out on him because of a bidding war, not just because of preference, it's definitely going to come off as a strong disappointment to many fans, including myself, for valid reasons. But Jordan Montgomery, Yamamoto, we would love both these guys in the rotation, obviously. The Mets are going to be able to land at least one. Jordan Montgomery is certainly a guy that I would not be opposed to whatsoever in this rotation. I've spoken highly of him in recent content. I had him as the Mets' third top free agent target this MLB free agency in recent content. Make sure to check it out. Links down below as always, folks. But what really stands out to me about this report regarding Montgomery is that I saw the writing on the wall. I feel like we all did just a day prior, because I was initially going to do a Montgomery video today regardless of this report. So now we have factual reporting more than just assumption, which is what we saw from Jeff Passan yesterday as he came out with an ESPN Plus article stating the following: 10 teams to watch as free agency picks up. And then when discussing the Mets in particular, what did he deem as their perfect transaction this MLB offseason? It would be to sign Jordan Montgomery, while he also had, and I'll make note of that, the Boston Red Sox landing Yoshinobu Yamamoto and the Chicago Cubs landing, yes, Shohei Ohtani. So of course none of these things are guaranteed and he's just sharing his input, but usually when Jeff Passan goes out of his way to make exclusive content like this for ESPN Plus and states that, you know, the Mets, it seems like a perfect transaction, a perfect fit there is substance behind that. This is not just, you know, assumption or anything like that. He clearly is in on the know, and as we find out not even 24 hours later from Michael Marino, yes, it is valid that yes, they have interest here in Jordan Montgomery. And as you see from the stat line down below, Monty had himself a really good season this past year, splitting time with both the St. Louis Cardinals there and the Texas Rangers, in which he was one of their most effective pitchers, if not their most effective one, there in postseason play. When it came to clutching up and mattering most in the big moment, Monty did exactly that. The stat line down below, just under 200 innings, the most he has pitched in his career. We're looking at a 3.2 ERA, a 4+ expected ERA, which again isn't anything crazy, but still respectable numbers for Montgomery, who put up a right around an 8K per 9 to a sub 230 walks per 9. And throughout his career, in which he spent the 5+ years there with the Yanks, in which he was very productive, very reliable. Jordan Montgomery, what stands out so much about him is he reminds me a lot of a Jose Quintana, but younger, with more upside. Guys, that's going to give you guaranteed 6 solid innings at least every single start out there. Going to give you 2 to 3 earned run ball, if not less. And he has done a great job shutting down opposing clubs with not only the fastball, but those nasty off-speed pitches. Montgomery's arsenal is very compact, it's concise, and he just has that reliability as someone who has been healthy the past 3 years plus, in which he has pitched pretty much as humanly possible. 32 starts this past season, 32 the year prior, and 30 the year before that. So if you want to bring in not only sustainability but consistency, Jordan Montgomery is your guy for the middle of this rotation. So that is why I'm certainly enamored by the idea of the Mets landing him. I'm not opposed to it whatsoever, and hearing from Jeff Passan himself viewing this as the perfect transaction for the Mets, and then Michael Marino coming out a day later and saying that, yeah, the Mets really like him, I'm certainly happy about that as a Mets fan, because they need to weigh all options, obviously. But Jordan Montgomery, Yoshinobu Yamamoto, Shota Imanaga, these guys are at the top of my personal wish list, and that seems to be the exact case here with the Mets themselves. So that is certainly a plus. So now let's get into the likelihood, unlikelihood of the Mets bringing in someone like Jordan Montgomery, who's expected to make anywhere between $150 to $200+ million this MLB offseason. Of course, money is not the issue with the Mets here. The term would be the only thing that could, be something where you push off aside, given that he's already around the age of 30 or so. Say a 6-7 year contract isn't the most appealing down the line, but the Mets at least have shown a willingness in years past to do this for guys that they think can be provided, giving them consistent production for multiple years. The Mets really wanted Kevin Gausman 2 off seasons ago, and the only reason why they didn't land him wasn't because of money. They offered more money than any other club, but he decided to go to Toronto because he deemed that as a better fit. The Mets were not just trying to land Gausman on a long-term deal, but they were also doing that while fully aware of Max Scherzer and going all in on him as well. So the Mets have had this vision in the past of going after 2 behemoth starters in the free agent market to land them on either multi-year deals, like longer term, like Montgomery here, which is what he's going to get, or shorter term here, which is of course what Scherzer got. Now the Mets will not be in that market given the type of players out there, and they've learned their lesson with the Maxes and the Verlanders of years past, but we do know that they have shown that willingness to go out there and sign these guys, or at least show that interest for guys on, say, 6-7 year deals, which is contrary to belief what many of us initially thought, and say certain instances in years past, were they being stubborn? Did they not want to go long term with certain guys? Certain guys, yes, other guys, no. And Montgomery, this is a situation where they would be more than willing to do exactly that. But Jordan Montgomery is currently living in Boston. He will be living in Boston for the entirety of the winter, as he's not only helping out his wife, who has a career path in that area right now, but just getting a feel for it. And we know the Red Sox early this offseason were reportedly very much interested in Jordan Montgomery. So I think there's a great chance that Monty ends up landing in Boston, where he's currently residing, which makes perfect sense for him. Would love to see him carve up the Yanks as a former Yank then, as that Brian Cashman trade was so lopsided from the beginning when they traded Montgomery. I mean, not too lopsided. Harrison Bader had his production, but he couldn't stay on the field, and Monty has went on to be a very consistent starter that the Yanks wish that they had back, which is exactly why they still have interest reacquiring the veteran southpaw. But Boston seems like a great destination, a great fit there for Monty. A return to Texas definitely seems in the cards as well, and you have to keep in mind the lack of state tax that you'd have to deal with if he would say land back in New York, this time with the Mets. But the Mets definitely have a great shot at landing someone like him, not only because of the dollars that they're working with, but also the market itself. Jordan Montgomery, what stands out so much to me about him is not only his consistency as a starter in the game today, but understanding a big market like New York. Having the success that he did during his time with the Yanks for 5+ seasons cannot be scoffed at, especially when you know how New York media is, especially regarding the New York Yankees. Like, that is not an easy thing to deal with. A lot of guys can't handle it. Monty handled it perfectly fine, understands the market, understands these hectic fan bases, and that is very appealing for me, not only as a fan, but also very appealing when you look at the Mets' current manager, and Carlos Mendoza. He knows a thing or two about Jordan Montgomery. He has spent his entire tenure there with the Yanks with Monty. So that is another thing to keep in note, where the Mets may have a slight upper hand in potentially not only pursuing, but landing someone on Montgomery and his caliber here. Again, nothing Nothing is guaranteed, of course. We're just always breaking down whenever the Mets have an interest level in players, and they have a high interest level here in Montgomery. So whether the Mets land Yamamoto or not, Montgomery is certainly a name that we're going to be keeping a close eye on this MLB free agency, because when you look at the current guys available out there outside of Yamamoto, then Montgomery, and of course Erod, in which many people are kind of wondering, why is Erod's value currently not nearly to the degree as Montgomery when looking at the numbers of what their projected contracts are going to be, when Erod has a similar profile to Montgomery? And while that is true, I think you could still make the argument that Montgomery, his consistency and how he could project long term, may be more appealing than someone like Eduardo Rodriguez, who is still a very nice arm out there in the free agent market. But after you get into the Montgomerys, the Snells of the world, and the Shota Imanagas, who I'm certainly not opposed to, another MPB pitcher, things definitely start to fall off quite a bit. So it's imperative for the Mets to do their best here in the free agent market to land the starters that they want. Yamamoto's at the top of that list, but especially in a situation where they don't land Yamamoto and Montgomery's still out there, they're 100% going to be going all in on that market. They may very well go all in on, say, a Shota Imanaga as well. We're going to follow on and see what is best for this club and what they end up doing here. But don't get it twisted. The Mets definitely want starting pitching. They're all in on this market, and do not be afraid that you haven't necessarily heard the Mets name in the public eye as much as, say, we've seen in years past at this point in MLB offseason. The Mets have done a really good job working under the radar thus far, including all their front office hires and coaching hires. Nothing was leaked prior to them really coming out. I'm curious if that's going to be at all similar to how they operate with, of course, free agents and trade options this MLB offseason. So Mets fans, whoever you're a fan of, I want to know your thoughts down below, how you feel about Jordan Montgomery and Mets' potential pursuit of him right now. Do you like the idea? Do you not like the idea? What type of contract could you see Monty getting this offseason? And should he not land in Queens, where do you see him landing? Overall, thank you guys so much for the endless support. Stay tuned for consistent coverage here on the channel, all things Mets, and also stay tuned. We will be live, barring any changes tonight, unlike yesterday, because something came up last minute. Planning to go live tonight around 8 p.m. Eastern or so, doing a Mets Free Agent Frenzy live stream, talking more at length about Montgomery and all the other options at this point, while answering all your comments, questions, and concerns in the live show. So again, thank you so much, folks, for the endless support. And as always, let's go Mets, baby. Peace out.